Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin. If you could take your seats. Nice to see everyone this October morning. Welcome. It is the October 15th regular meeting of the Arlington County Board. I am the board chair, Katie Crystal. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Mr. Carantonis, Vice Chairman Mr. Dorsey, Mr. DeFerenti, and Ms. Garvey. We are glad to have those of you who are here joining us in the county boardroom, and we welcome those who are participating remotely through Microsoft Teams. Just a few announcements as we get underway. As you can tell, masks are optional. We certainly support those who are wearing masks based on their individual preference, and you will see us doing our level best to keep social distancing. For members of the public, county staff, and other presenters, some of them will be participating remotely as part of our hybrid meeting model for our remote speakers. If you could please keep your microphones muted and your cameras off until you're called on to speak. That helps us save bandwidth when it's your turn to speak. If you could unmute yourself. If you're by phone, that's *6 to do so, or you click the microphone button on the toolbar if you're using Teams on an app or browser. For our in-person speakers, the podium height right in front of you can be adjusted. There are up and down arrow buttons on your right. We ask that you speak clearly into the microphone, which is on right now. That helps not only us hear you, but the broadcast pick you up as well. A Spanish language interpreter is available for individual translation to the public, for the public, during this first part of the meeting. Could we ask our interpreter to introduce herself?
Yes, good morning. My name is Laura Castro, I'm Spanish interpreter. Buenos días, mi nombre es Laura Castro, intérprete de español. Thank you, gracias.
Yeah, muchas gracias, Señora Castro. We're glad to have you with us this morning. Okay. We are ready to launch into public comment. I think everyone knows the drill, but as for anybody who is new today, the goal of public comment is to bring forward new items that the board may not have been aware of or not otherwise on the agenda. We try to hear a range of topics and to be fair and consistent across all speakers. And so I want to thank those who have worked with our clerks or with me personally to recognize and respect that rule. That helps ensure that we can go on to our regular business. And it is also fair to fellow residents. So there are, of course, other ways you can let us know as the county board about an issue, including writing to us at countyboard@arlingtonva.us. For a more dynamic conversation and a deeper exploration of your concerns, you may want to consider an upcoming Open Door Monday. We also thank the 700 of you who have participated in small conversations with us in recent weeks about the topic of zoning reform and the missing middle housing study. If you'd like any more information about how to contact the board or participate, our clerks, Ms. Jacobs, and outside Mr. Barrera today are happy to assist. With that, I believe we are ready for our first public comment speakers. To our clerk, please, if you could call them. Thank you, Ms. Jacobs.
Yes, our first speaker is Brian Casabianca, followed by Charles Day.
Good morning, Mr. Casabianca.
Good morning, Madam Chair, esteemed board members. My name is Brian Casabianca. I'm a Hispanic resident of Arlington County. Soy Brian Casabianca, residente hispanohablante del Condado de Arlington. I have over 30 years of experience in economics, finance, and law. The idea that ending all single-family home zoning will produce affordability is wrong. It is highly unlikely that the missing middle will create housing for households with low income, and even less for disadvantaged groups and minorities. If increasing density is Arlington's way of solving housing issues, it has to be made based on solid facts and not forced upon people. Building more housing on land will not make new housing more affordable because the biggest cost of housing is land, and land prices rise when upzoning occurs, especially in large metro areas like Washington, D.C., with the draw of so many high-paying, skilled jobs. The goal of missing middle is to build the most units per home in order to bring down costs. The chances of an 8-plex replacing a teardown are likely to be very high. Furthermore, it is not realistic to assume that 20 lots per year will become missing middle in each of the next 9 years. Developers who build missing middle will have every incentive to maximize their profits by replacing single-family homes with high-end missing middle homes that will end up being affordable only to high-end buyers. I present to you the 4,200 signatures of Arlington residents who oppose this flawed and irrevocable plan. We ask you to respect the voice of a very large group of current Arlington residents, and we urge you to drop this proposal and look for better solutions.
Sir.
No, sir, excuse me, please don't approach the board. Tom, please, can you please go to our clerk? Sir, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Casabianca.
Makes it official.
Madam Clerk, could you call the next speaker?
Our next speaker is Charles Day, followed by Audrey Clement. Charles Day.
Good morning. I'm speaking today in support of missing middle housing on behalf of Voice. I'm speaking today to remind us of the rippling effect of a housing shortage, and I'm speaking as someone who was able to move to Arlington because of market rate affordable housing along Columbia Pike. My wife is a native Arlingtonian. Her parents were able to afford a small home 30 years ago when they were a young couple. After our recent marriage, we were deeply grateful for the garden apartment that we found. It fits our budget and it allows us to save. It allowed my wife to take a risk on a dream job because we can make rent on my income alone, albeit more tightly. Coming from less walkable and bikeable neighborhoods in Fairfax, it's been wonderful to not have to rely as much on our car, especially in a time of rising inflation. It is not lost on us that because of the lack of starter homes, couples like us are taking up an apartment that a lower income family might need. Unfortunately, most young people don't have a lot of options. Most of Arlington is zoned only for single-family homes, and this artificial restriction continues to impact so many people. For example, there's our friend Mallory, who would make a great foster parent. She has attended informational sessions, is on an interest list, and has thought seriously about welcoming a teenager into her home. The problem is, she lives in a studio rental, and there are no affordable options for her to size up and accommodate 2 people. There's no silver bullet to solve the housing crisis overnight, but rents continue to rise, and the starter home is becoming a thing of the past. Please, vote to give Arlington more options so more people living here can have a shot at staying here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Day.
Our next speaker is Audrey Clement, followed by Michael and Bessie.
Can you hear me?
We can. Good morning, Dr. Clement.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Audrey Clement. I'm an independent candidate for county board. In recent columns, Sun Gazette editor Scott McCaffrey has given the nod to incumbent Matt DeFerrani for county board, even though McCaffrey himself has been increasingly critical of the direction of county board. Scott disses DeFerrani's opponents, including yours truly, with whom he does agree on missing middle, because the $21,000 I've raised to date is not enough to beat DeFerrani, who has reported total receipts in 2022 of over $69,000. Here is a taste of some of McCaffrey's jaded commentary. Quote, challenger for life, Audrey Clement finally has an issue on which she can pile up some votes. She's against missing middle, as are an increasing number of Arlingtonians. But as always, she refuses to build a campaign infrastructure or raise the funds to actually get her message out to those voters. For her, 2022 will go down as a wasted opportunity, end of quote. Yet, about $50,000 of DeFerrani's large donor take is from people and organizations from outside the county, most from outside the state, including $13,500 from construction trade unions destined to benefit from the missing middle building boom. If the donations from those with no vested interest in the county were subtracted from DeFerrani's haul, his receipts would shrink to $19,000 and the election would be much more competitive. Not only does McCaffrey ignore the bad odor of buying elections with out-of-state donations, he insists for all practical purposes that that is the only way for an independent to get a Sun Gazette endorsement. The question is why McCaffrey is holding.
Thank you, Dr. Clement.
Our next speaker,
thank you, Dr. Clement. Our next speaker is Michael and Bessie.
Good morning, Mr. Mbisi.
Hi, my name is Mike Mbezi. I'm here to ask the county board to consider revising and reducing the parking minimum requirements for very dense areas full of high-rises like Crystal City and Roslyn. I was driven to come here and speak on this because I like to walk around and see what all is going on, and I noticed that the large hotel that is being built in Roslyn, the Marriott, has 9 floors of parking, 4 underground and 5 above ground, which seemed very excessive for something in Roslyn that is probably about 500 feet from the metro. And that seemed very absurd, especially for a luxury hotel, because anyone who lives close enough that driving to DC is more competitive than flying will just drive from where they live and not stay in a hotel. And anyone who's coming from further away and can afford to stay in the Marriott can afford a plane ticket. So there's unlikely to be substantial enough demand for parking at this large luxury hotel to have justified building 9 stories of parking garage, including 5 above ground, which do not, how do I put this? They don't contribute positively to the aesthetics of the building. They make it look very ugly, frankly, and it's a detriment to the urban fabric of the county and will do nothing but induce car trips and create traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mbizzi. Madam Clerk, is that our final speaker?
Yes, it is.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for coming this morning. Thank you all for allowing us to have this conversation and hear from everybody in such an orderly way. As is generally our comment or practice, we'll take just a brief moment to respond to some of those comments before moving on to our consent remarks. To just note quickly, Mr. Casabianco, appreciate your coming as well as the delivery of the petition. Mr. Day, thank you as well for coming, and thank you for sharing the personal experiences of one of your neighbors, and thank you to her for her willingness to serve as a foster parent, which is something very much needed in our community. Dr. Clement, I guess it's October, so we're getting a campaign speech at the board. Appreciate your being here this morning. Mr. Mbizzi, thank you. That conversation about revising and reducing parking minimums was actually one this board had in 2017 for many of the reasons you described. Interestingly, I will note that Marriott in Roslyn project, which we approved, I think maybe about 2 years ago at this point, well exceeds our parking requirements. And this board and the Planning Commission had quite a bit of conversation at the time about the amount of parking proposed. Ultimately, I believe the property owner and the hotel felt strongly that they needed parking because of the conference center function. But this is very much a live conversation that we are having, not only kind of across the board in terms of parking minimums, or as some communities are going to parking maximums, but also on a site plan by site plan basis. So appreciate your raising that. Notwithstanding the amount of parking, we are looking forward to that project being completed and providing a much needed conference facility in Roslyn as we try to bring our commercial sector back along from its pandemic woes. With that, let me turn to colleagues who might like to give comments as well. Mr. DeFerranti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. Dr. Clement's comments, I think, sought to sort of hint that my motives in policy are not honorable, and so that's what's frustrating. I support public financing, public campaign financing in Virginia and nationally, but I will not, and I don't take a dime from developers. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I learned that one donation that was submitted online had an association with a developer, and I returned it. The money that I have received is through connections related to Teach for America, which most people would say is an honorable entity. I've considered the integrity related to it. I have 248 small donors. I have no promises to any of the unions. I merely seek to fight for working people. Let's have a debate on policy. Let's have a debate on equity. Let's do it civilly, please.
Thank you, Mr. DeFerranti. I appreciate that. All right. With that, I thank again those who've joined us for public comment this morning. Appreciate your engagement, and it's nice to hear from you all. We will move now to our consent agenda. We ask as you leave the room that you do it quietly so we can continue our work. Thank you so much. Ms. Jacobs.
Which is still on housing, Madam Chair.
Oh, okay. Great.
Dr. Clement, if you could please turn off your camera.
Oh, I'm good. I'm good, Sharon.
Begin again with our consent agenda. Ms. Jacobs, have any items been pulled from the consent agenda?
Yes, we do have one item that's been pulled, item number 21, which is the renaming of Beaver Pond Park to Ballston Wetland Park.
Okay, we look forward to hearing that item at our recess meeting on Tuesday, October 18th, no earlier than 6:30 p.m. For anybody who would like to speak to that item, please visit the County Board website, countyboard.arlingtonva.us, or call our office, 703-228-3130 to sign up in advance. We also welcome you signing up in person on Tuesday.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move approval of the consent agenda with the exception of the excluded item number 21.
Thank you very much. Ms. Garvey seconds. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right. With that, all in favor of the consent agenda approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Okay, so just a couple of items to spotlight. We, of course, vote on our consent agenda because these items are generally non-controversial. It doesn't mean they aren't important. So just a couple of the noteworthy items, particularly items 15 and 16, we are accepting a significant amount of funding from several sources to address congestion. The only way that works to address congestion, which is reducing vehicle miles traveled, a conversation that we are often having at the regional level, by providing transit alternatives to single occupancy vehicle commutes and other trips. We are accepting federal congestion mitigation and air quality funding, as well as regional surface transportation program funding money, fondly known as CMAQ and RSTP. That money comes via the state, and that supports Arlington County Commuter Services transportation demand management activities. That includes working with commuter employers on transit benefits to promote car and van pool programs. We are accepting nearly $10 million in state support from Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation to realize multiple priorities for the ART bus system, many that we have talked about as a board, including ADA bus stop improvements, purchasing technology that will allow us to deploy transit signal priority, a big priority, and no pun intended for us, and conducting a free and reduced fare study here in Arlington. So altogether, we are grateful for the partnership from the state and federal governments. They help us keep Arlington's economy strong by improving commute options for workers, improving transit quality of life for Arlington riders, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions in our community. Regarding transportation safety, and in keeping with our Vision Zero strategy, we also just voted to amend the county code to decrease the speed limit in 4 key locations. That includes Washington Boulevard, from Arlington Boulevard to North Pershing Drive, South Joy Street from Columbia Pike to Army Navy Drive, Columbia Pike from South Dinwiddie to the Fairfax County line, and finally Lorcum Lane from Cherry Hill Road to Military Road. Reducing speed limits is part of that Vision Zero strategy, and we look forward to working with community members to enforce and obey. Slowing down saves lives. Finally, an important item was the expansion of micro-fulfillment centers throughout the county. This helps us deliver on a more resilient commercial market, which we discussed at great length during the manager's report last month. Specifically, micro-fulfillment centers, they're sometimes referred to as the last mile of the delivery process. Micro-fulfillment allows, or using space in Arlington for micro-fulfillment means that goods can be delivered to consumers around Arlington more quickly. That provides residents greater consumer choice and access to goods, and it provides a much smaller scale than larger and more typical warehouse facilities, while giving alternatives to occupancy of buildings that might right now be vacant. So lots of good things in the works, and we appreciate our staff's work on quite a few of those consent items today. Okay, I believe with that we are ready for our one regular agenda item. Ms. Jacobs, could you call that item for us, please?
Yes, item number 31. Excuse me. It's a request for the county board to allocate the Affordable Housing Investment Loan Funds for use by Park Shirlington Preservation LP, and to approve county loan documents to help facilitate the renovation of Park Shirlington Apartments, which is a 294-unit affordable development located at 4510 31st Street South.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jacobs. Mr. Manager, I will turn it to you to introduce the staff involved.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joining us this morning virtually is Melissa Danowski, and Ann Venezia is also available, so I'll turn it over to Ms. Danowski.
Thank you very much. One moment while I share my screen. Thanks for bearing with me. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that.
We can. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The owner of Park Shirlington, Standard Communities and Foundation Housing, referred to as the borrower, are requesting a $31.9 million AHIF loan, Affordable Housing Investment Fund loan, to renovate Park Shirlington Apartments, which contains 294 units and built in 1954. The total AHIF loan includes a $22.76 million AHIF allocation that was approved by the County Board in July of 2021, as well as a $6 million loan used to assist the purchase of the property by the borrower back in 2017. Also, a $540,000 deposit used to exercise an option on the southern parcel, which is no longer being pursued. The total loan includes a request for an additional $2.56 million as part of this County Board action. Staff recommends approval of the additional AHIF loan allocation and associated loan documents for the total $31.9 million AHIF loan. The site is located at 4510 31st Street South in the Fairlington neighborhood. It is bordered by Fort Reynolds Park to the west and the Arlington County Trade Center to the north. I-395 is located to the south of the property. So as mentioned, staff is recommending a $2.56 million AHIF allocation in addition to the $29.3 million approved last July. The final amount of the AHIF loan was to depend on finalization of senior lending commitments, further refinement of the scope of work and construction costs, and other financing assumptions. Total development costs since that time increased about $8.4 million. In part, this increase was due to new items added to the budget, including development of a new building with a community space and a leasing office. And the existing leasing office will be restored to a 2-bedroom residential unit. The new community space will include a community room that will be used to host resident programming, as well as provide residents with a space to use for community gatherings and social events. Over the course of the renovation and construction of the community space, the borrower will work to understand the needs of the residents. Examples of resident programming could include educational assistance for school-age children, employment and financial stability programming, among other resident service opportunities. The new building will also contain other community amenities, such as a fitness center. The budget also includes solar panels on all viable rooftops, including the new building with a leasing center and community space. It's estimated that the system will provide roughly 1/3 of the property's current total energy annual usage. And lastly, the budget now includes a digital equity internet reserve that will be used to help pay for free high-speed internet at the property during the 15-year compliance period. So combined, the community room and restoring a unit back to residential use, solar energy, and internet reserve added about $4.7 million to the budget. The other increases are attributable to general construction cost increases. Project debt reserves, which were further refined according to HUD requirements, also attributed to the increased budget. But despite the overall $8.4 million increase, the total AHIF loan increased only by $2.59 million since the July 2021 County Board AHIF allocation. To make up the remaining gap, the borrower increased their deferred developer fee, and the project will receive additional low-income housing tax credit equity due to the availability of more credits resulting from the increased eligible costs, as well as increased low-income housing tax credit pricing. So as mentioned, the borrower is requesting a $31.9 million loan. This equates to $108,473 per unit. And this is in line with other recent affordable housing projects with county loan funds. It will have a 40-year term at a 0.5% interest rate. And in this table, you can see the sources and uses for the proposed renovations at Park Shirlington. The sources include about $46 million and 4% low-income housing tax credit equity, an AHIF loan, a deferred developer fee of about $1.1 million, and a $3 million seller loan. The borrower will use Arlington County Industrial Development Authority bonds to meet the requirement of utilizing tax-exempt bonds for the 4% LIHTC project. And this was approved at the July 2021 County Board meeting as well. The renovation meets many goals in the Affordable Housing Master Plan. It will prevent the loss of committed affordable housing. The site will be affordable for 75 years. The project will preserve family-sized committed affordable units, including 223 2-bedroom units and 14 3-bedroom units. It will add 8 Type A accessible units, and 15 units will be added to the permanent supportive housing stock. The renovations will be phased, with approximately 10 units undergoing renovations at any one time. The borrower proposes a renovation method that would allow all existing qualified tenants to remain at the property during renovations. Residents will need to temporarily relocate from their current unit with all of their furniture and belongings into a vacant hospitality unit at Park Shirlington. and the hospitality unit will be comparable to their current apartment. Residents will be provided with boxes and packing materials to pack up their apartment, and a renovation coordinator will schedule, coordinate, and supervise the moving of their packed belongings and furniture from their home to the hospitality unit and then back again, using a licensed, bonded, and insured professional moving company. And additional assistance, such as arranging for packing and unpacking assistance to elderly residents, residents with disabilities, and any other reasonable accommodation requests will be provided. Renovations are anticipated to take approximately 3 weeks per unit. There may be an estimated 40 households who earn over 60% of the area median income, pending final income verifications being conducted by the borrower. Staff is recommending all units be affordable up to 60% AMI, as the greatest need is for affordable housing for households earning below 60% AMI, as demonstrated in the Affordable Housing Master Plan. In addition, including a unit set aside for households earning 60 to 80% AMI would result in a financing gap due to the inability to obtain tax credit equity for units serving households above 60% AMI. The tenant relocation plan has been developed that in part lists the steps the borrower will take to help these households who will need to permanently relocate if they are over 60% AMI limits, as the property undertakes renovations as part of the low-income housing tax credit program. These steps include assistance finding comparable housing that meets their needs by providing residents with information about other market affordable and affordable properties in Arlington. We'll also work with other landlords in the area in an effort to obtain leasing priority for Park Shirlington residents. Properties nearby with up to 80% AMI units, either market rate affordable or committed affordable, include Shirlington House, the Apex, and a handful of apartment buildings in Shirlington Village. Crystal House also has units affordable up to 80% AMI. In addition, 120-day notices and moving cost assistance will be provided. And the Tenant Landlord Commission approved the tenant relocation plan at their July 2022 meeting. In terms of the timeline and pending approval of the staff recommendations by the county board, finance closing would occur pending a governor's pool bond allocation from the state, at which the earliest could occur near the end of 2022, or at the latest could be received in 2023. Renovations will occur shortly after finance closing and take approximately 2 years to complete. To conclude, the recommendations within the staff report include approval of loan documents and an additional $2.59 million in AHIF towards the renovation for a total $31.9 million AHIF loan. Thank you, and I can now turn it over to Stephen Kahn with Standard Communities, who I believe has a brief presentation.
Thanks, Melissa. Well said, and thank you all for having me today. Also, give me a moment just to switch over to a share screen.
Thanks.
Okay, so not too much in my presentation that Melissa didn't thoroughly cover, but by way of background, for those who may not recall from prior presentations, as Melissa mentioned, the two co-developers on this deal, my organization, Standard Communities, as well as the National Foundation for Affordable Housing. We've worked together for many years and look forward to bringing Park Shirlington into its next phase together. Standard Communities, we've got about 15,000 apartments across the country, more than 13,000 of which are affordable public or workforce housing. And that is really our focus, the creation, preservation, or development of affordable housing, especially in high cost, high opportunity areas such as Arlington. We are done 30 plus tax credit transactions that are analogous to this, including market to affordable conversions, both the largest market to affordable conversion using the tax credit program in the state of California, 840 something units in the Bay Area as well. So this is very much within our wheelhouse and something we are very comfortable doing and excited to do, and we get better each time we do it. Foundation Housing, National Foundation for Affordable Housing Solutions, our partner in this deal, similarly very experienced in this with more than 120 communities across 22 states and 13,000 plus apartment homes, and similarly aligned in the creation and preservation of high quality affordable housing. So we've got a ton of experience, and this will be our first property in Arlington. We're excited to kick it off and have this be the first of many. As Melissa kind of ran through this all, so I don't necessarily feel compelled to recap again the history of this property and our county's involvement in it, but do want to reiterate the shared goal of getting this property from market affordable to now affordable under the terms of the current AHIF loan into a permanent affordability program, which between the LIHTC program and the Virginia Housing Reg Agreement that comes with that of 30 years, as well as a new 75-year affordability component under the proposed AHIF loan that would, this property's affordability will outlast probably all of us, which is exciting for us. Just a few more pictures. Melissa mentioned the locations. I have some pictures of the existing conditions. I did include the swimming pool at the property, which will be renovated and remain. I know that's enjoyed by the residents and important to the community, so we're excited that that's able to stay. And then the unit interiors will receive a very comprehensive renovation as well. So kitchens, baths, flooring, lighting, electrical systems, all the things that you typically think of for a kitchen renovation or for an apartment renovation, as well as the stuff that's not always thought of yet is equally, if not more important to ensuring that a home is a nice place to live, making sure that the envelope and the integrity of the building is solid, that the windows are new and better insulation, both from noise and heat and air conditioning loss, renovations to the entryways and the landscaping and controlled access systems, so security and lighting and cameras, all very much in scope. So most mentioned the community center and the solar panels being added to the property as well, which we're excited about. Architectural drawings are sometimes tough to see, especially on a shared screen, but I did include just a little bit of detail here that expands upon what Melissa mentioned. So this entire wing here is community space, fitness center, a multi-purpose room with storage closets. So if we wanted to clear out this furniture and have it be a bit more open, that can, and then intended for it to work as kind of an indoor-outdoor space. So this is an exit to the exterior with a deck and patio area that attaches to that like central greenway at the property. And then over here, a leasing office, a business center with computers, places for residents to come in and do paperwork for lease renewals or compliance with the affordability programs, as well as file storage. So having this building, in addition to being a great benefit to the residents, will also allow us to take a unit that is currently being used as the leasing office and create another 2-bedroom, or restore that to serving as a 2-bedroom unit. So taking it from 293 up to 294 units of housing. Sources and uses, exactly as Melissa outlined, but just in slightly different format here. Happy to continue discussing or answer any questions that you may have. But thank you very much for the time.
Thanks so much, Mr. Khan. Please do stay close. We appreciate having you here this morning. I believe we are ready now for any public speakers. Ms. Jacobs, could you call our public speakers?
Yes, we do have one speaker, Jane Green.
Good morning, Ms. Green.
That was already on. Hello, good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Jane Green. I am a member of the volunteer board of the Alliance for Housing Solutions. We support the allocation of AHIF funds to finance the renovation of affordable housing at Park Shirlington. Arlington's escalating housing crisis harms low-income renters more than any other residents. Preserving affordable housing in Shirlington and committing nearly 300 units to remain affordable at 60% AMI for 75 years will help Arlington meet the goals of the Affordable Housing Master Plan. Furthermore, this project includes a large number of family-sized units, Type A accessible units, and permanent supportive housing units. All of these are essential components for our housing ecosystem. Housing for vulnerable populations would not be available without public support like AHIF. This project is also commendable because the renovations will include the creation of community space for both resident programming and community building. With regard to specifically community building, AHS believes that the voice of renter residents is integral to sustaining thriving communities. To that end, AHS encourages the county to mandate that landlords recognize and appropriately engage with tenant associations in order to meet the needs of the communities they serve. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Okay, do we have any other speakers, Ms. Jacobs?
No, we don't.
All right, the conversation is now with the board. To reduce any suspense, I think it makes sense to go ahead and get a motion on the table, but we will have an opportunity for some discussion and questions. I'm going to recognize Mr. DeFranti, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will move the county manager's recommendation that we allocate $2,591,000 in affordable housing investment loan funds for use by Park Shirlington Preservation LP, the borrower, an affiliate of Standard Communities and Foundation Housing, Standard Foundation. And second, that we approve approval of county loan documents for a total AHIF loan in the amount of $31,891,000 to help facilitate the renovation of Park Shirlington Apartments, a 294-unit affordable apartment development located at 4510 31st Street South that will be owned and operated by the borrower.
There a second? Seconded by Mr. Dorsey. All right. Discussion on the motion. Well, I'm going to begin with just a question first for Ms. Danowski. Thank you for sharing with us some of the specifics of the tenant relocation plan. And I know I speak on behalf of all of us in thanking the Tenant Landlord Commission for reviewing this and approving it at their meeting in July. I wondered if you could say just another word. You named, encouragingly, a number of properties relatively nearby that have either committed or market rate units at that 80% AMI. Do we take into account occupancy rates or vacancy rates of those other buildings in asking the applicant to develop their tenant landlord or their tenant relocation plan?
You know, to my knowledge, I don't think we specifically ask about vacancy rates, but it is encouraged that Standard Communities go and talk to landlords, so when they do have a vacancy, they can potentially get priority for those Park Shirlington residents that may be over income.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I wonder if we might have Mr. Khan just speak to, I imagine Standard has some practice in these types of tenant relocation plans, given that I imagine many of your sources of funds do require restrictions to those making less than what some tenants currently do make. So is there anything that you might want to add for color about the tenant relocation plan or how Standard as a matter of practice works with those who are over income once you acquire a building?
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the question, and it's something that we pride ourselves on, is recognizing that in any aspect of our business, there's a person behind every unit. It's not just a unit count. There's an individual or a family there that is impacted by the decisions that we make, and we are trying to serve these communities as best we are able, but try to be sensitive to the needs of individuals as well. So just circling back just for a moment on the vacancy of other properties, as everyone knows, affordable housing is in too short of a supply, and vacancy can be an issue. Part of the benefit of having the long lead time that we do, both for this phased renovation as well as the process that we're working through here and with the state, is that we can build those relationships with adjacent properties and know that as natural attrition and turnover happens, that they know they've got us waiting in the wings, that there might be something that can be done, and have us on an appropriate wait list and not jumping in front of others, but making sure that we're working as closely with them to find a reasonable solution. So there's no set way that it works every time, but the benefit of having time is that we can often figure it out. In terms of working with households who may be over income, it's certainly very delicate, especially when you have folks who are just slightly above that 60% AMI cutoff. They don't necessarily feel in high opportunity and high cost markets that they should be disqualified from affordable housing programs with 60% AMI cutoffs, that they still need some assistance as well. So again, the long lead time and being able to work closely with them, and the recognition that their ability to continue their ordinary routine and have a plan in place is of paramount importance to us, and that's why we do have a full-time staff member at the property once the renovations are imminent, working with those households to find appropriate solutions and to kind of think through what can very much be a daunting task of, school transportation and how getting to work works and new scheduling. Those are all things that we like to work with residents to think through, and can approach very delicately as well. So we're going through the process now of identifying those over-income households, so that even though the renovations are not imminent, as we work with the state on getting the bond allocation, we could have 6+ months of knowing who they are, so we can start to lay that groundwork and not have anybody feel rushed to a conclusion that might be that the lack of time would make harder.
That's really helpful. Thank you for those insights, Mr. Khan. I saw Ms. Garvey first, and then Mr. Karantonis.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. In fact, I'd like to follow a little on your line of questioning, because this is something that's sort of starting to concern me more and more as we get more and more market rate housing that converts to committed affordable. those folks making, 80, or I hear in this case 60, over 60% to like 120, I think it's going to get harder and harder for them to find places to afford here in Arlington. And I wonder, I think this is a question maybe for Ms. Venezia, actually, although anybody jump in who should be answering this question. I mean, are we looking at what's happening kind of as a pattern and predicting out a bit where people are going to be in the middle? It's a different kind of missing middle. I just worry that more and more, if you need supported, housing up to 60%, we're supplying more and more, and we certainly need to continue doing that. But I'm really starting to worry more and more about the folks that are just kind of in the middle. They make more than will qualify them for this kind of housing, and yet they don't begin to make enough to make it comfortable to find a place or easy to find a place here. And that may get harder and harder, and we may kind of hollow out a little bit folks in that middle income kind of area. And for long-term health of our community, I kind of worry about that. Are we doing much thinking about that or looking at that? And I was struck by the Crystal, I'll just finish up, the Crystal Houses that has decided to build a community, and if you get over the income, you don't have to leave. They're trying to allow people to stay, which I know is a different model and different financing. So if anybody on our staff would like to comment on that a little bit, and perhaps we could do some, like a report. I'd love to have a report back as this all kind of continues, maybe in a year or so, to find out what's really been happening to those folks that kind of fall off a fiscal cliff. They make too much to qualify, but not enough to really easily find something here in Arlington. Anybody want to take a stab at that for a little bit? I don't expect an extensive response.
Sure, I'm happy to respond to that. So I think, as Stephen said a few minutes ago, it is a really delicate issue. As we try to convert housing that's affordable in the long term, we also want to make sure that those residents who are making slightly over, but maybe not enough to find some of our higher end product, an affordable option, that we want to make sure that there are still places where those residents can go in the community. And so we do have some models, as Melissa said, where we do have some upper affordable middle income housing at the 80% level in some of our communities. And so we do try to identify those opportunities for households when we can. I will say, though, with some of our funding sources for the county to support some of those, again, higher affordable middle income rental units can be challenging. Sometimes we have to look at alternative funding sources in order to support those units. So I'll say we haven't totally solved it yet. It is something that we are paying attention to. And yes, we're happy to continue the conversation because we recognize that it is really important.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad, it is delicate and tricky, and I'm glad we're paying attention to it. So I'll be interested in kind of following that, because I think as we get farther and farther into providing committed affordable and having more and more of it, it's great. But I fear we're really losing the market rate, and folks, as I say, they're going to kind of fall off a fiscal cliff, which too many of our programs, do that to people. It's not sliding scale. You make $2 over, and suddenly you lose all your support, and you just plunge back down into a really difficult financial situation. Makes it hard for people to get ahead. Thank you. I think that was Ms. Venezia. Appreciate that response, and I'll be just interested in learning more over time. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Garvey. Mr. Carantonis and then Mr. DeFranti.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation and all the very, very long work that has been invested here. This is the third time that we hear this same item, actually. And I couldn't align myself more with Ms. Garvey's concern about what happens, on the upper side and on the lower side of the 60% AMI. 60% AMI, just to talk plain English, right now it's about $85,000 for a family of four, for a household, I should say, of four. So this is significant. We have a lot of families and a lot of residents who are below that. And this is an area of opportunity, a lot of residents who, and households who go above that. So there is, I believe I welcome Ms. Venezia's forthcoming attitude in studying that and trying to find solutions and build in these solutions as we go. Like, for example, we have had conversations about income averaging, et cetera, et cetera. I believe this is important. And to Ms. Crystal's remarks as well and question, I think that the pace of replacement and rehab is important as well. So anyway, my question is about the one imponderable here, which is on slide number 9, the finance closing will occur pending a governor's pool bond allocation at the end of 22 or 23. So what is the maximum risk there?
I'm not sure I understand maximum risk.
So what is at stake there? Finance closing will occur. I mean, so what is there a possibility that the bond allocation doesn't happen or is not available the moment that it's needed, and the closing could be influenced by that?
Yes.
Be under pressure.
Yes, that is a possibility for sure. The bonds required to do a 4% tax credit deal in Virginia are oversubscribed this year. So we've been working closely with the state agencies that are working to make those decisions or make those allocations of the limited pool of bonds that are available. Initial allocations for this year have gone out. Park Shirlington was not a recipient. We don't have clear insight as to what criteria or conditions were made there, but those decisions were made. Excuse me. In the event that a property that was awarded allocation is unable to close this year, we remain ready, willing, and able to receive that allocation and move Park Shirlington towards closing. As unfortunate a situation as that is this year, the benefit is that the upside is that on January 1, those bond pools refill again. They get a fresh allocation for 2023. So there are a few different pools of bonds in the state of Virginia. Excuse me. We have made for this year and will reapply next year for funding from each of them to find a way to get this deal closed. In the interim, we're keeping everything warm and moving forward so that when that allocation is there, we hopefully will be in a position to close very shortly thereafter.
Thank you. It's good for me to understand that. It's not a dominant risk, but there is a risk there, so it's good to understand that. Can you remind me again in what time frame the rehab project is expected to be completed?
Yeah, well, I'll say 2 years. It can vary a little bit as things get underway. We will discover things at the property, and we don't want to rush through anything and get it done too quickly. So we're hopeful that we'll come in a little bit less, but I think 2 years is an appropriate placeholder.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. DeFranti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, a thank you to Ms. Green. I don't think she's in the room, but her point about engaging tenants in projects is so important as I think about the last 2-3 years. So big thank you to Ms. Green for that, and also to there's a subcommittee report that our tenant landlord has put together, and I want to dig into it more. It is important, and I know a lot of work went into it. So those are just 2 comments. This is concluding comments as well, if that's okay. I asked, as we got a little bit of a staff briefing in the lead up to this meeting, I just want to sort of, for transparency and to show my thinking on this, Mr. Karantonis' points sort of on the governor's pool. I think mentioned this to Ms. Danowski and just wanted to say to Mr. Khan as well, I hope that we'll be, if there's ways in which our legislative liaison can be helpful, but only if there are ways in which our legislative liaison can be helpful going forward over the coming months and year, I'd be supportive of that. I think there are certainly important ways in which sometimes on this issue, perhaps I've said plenty and more beyond that may not serve our goals, but I did want to at least share that we are thinking about that as we seek to see a good result over the next 3 months and see the 2 years that you mentioned, Mr. Khan. So it's not so much a question, just a thought that I thought I would share. And if you have big thoughts, Mr. Khan, go ahead. And I know, or Ms. Danowski, if you had thoughts on this, that's great. But I don't necessarily need a response. I just wanted to share that out loud for our public and also for both of you. And thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll look to others maybe for concluding comments. Ms. Garvey?
Yeah, happy to do that. Appreciate the discussion we've been having here, and I don't want to get lost in the mix. That I think this is a great project, and it's going to really add important, good homes for a lot of folks here in Arlington. I appreciate that. I appreciate the persistence. What did you say, 3 times, Mr. Karantonis? I think it's come to us. It's at least that. It feels like we've been talking about it forever in various forms. So thank you for the persistence. That's clearly what it takes these days. And as you know, I'm basically a neighbor of this project. I live in Shirlington. And I think throughout, as everybody's been sort of persisting, I think my Shirlington neighbors have pretty much all been really very supportive about this project. The folks that live here provide they're important members of our community, and Shirlington's been pretty anxious, I think, I can't speak for Shirlington really, but I do talk to a lot of folks and see what's going on there, and I do think that they're really very, very favorable and should be pleased with this. So thank you. It continues to create a healthy and diverse community where it's comfortable for everybody to live, and really appreciate the work. And I know there's still more work to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Karantonis, Mr. Dorsey, any other comments? Good. Okay, Mr. Karantonis, great.
I can go first. That's okay. Numbers, right? 294 homes. This is a lot of homes. 75 years of preservation. 60% AMI. We said this is a household of 4 making $85,000 right now. A third of energy needs from solar panels. This is great. And as far as I can, my amateur view from Google Maps says that there are a lot of flat roofs and they can take a lot of solar panels there. Community center, accessible dwelling units and supportive housing. I definitely, the price is very high, and this should be clear. It's not more than average. It's not significantly more than average, but the cost of preserving housing affordability is significant, and I'm happy and proud that our community can afford and has planned to be able to do this. So I'm happily supporting the motion for this and hope to see that plan making that a wonderful community in a very transit-friendly place. In about 2 years' time, we will have a completely different Park Shirlington than we have today. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I will echo my colleagues' enthusiasm. It has been no small task to stabilize and perhaps even reach deeper into affordability for these units for 75 years. It's a wonderful thing. We, Mr. Khan, welcome you and your colleagues as a partner in Arlington. Look forward to, I hope, working with you all on other projects. And really want to thank you, and particularly Ms. Danowski on our staff and the team with which she works, because I know this has been an immensely complex one. And indeed, there is more complexity ahead with the competition for the governor's financing pool, and both the complexity and the size of the investment here, as Mr. Karantonis indicated, $32 million from the county, and that is, as Mr. Khan's chart showed us, only one source, really is stark, because I think we might all hope, and intuitively it might seem to be the case, that simply preserving what's already affordable in Arlington could be our best strategy to stay affordable in Arlington. And I think the complexity here and the size of the investment here required tells us a lot about the tremendous pressures on our market and what is required to keep things the same in terms of its affordability levels. And did want to just muse briefly I think Ms. Garvey's comments were well taken about, people who might be falling around that 80% AMI band. But I do want to just take a second. We are not talking about, low-income people who lose their benefits and fall off a cliff. 80% area median income for a family of 3 even, not up to a family of 4, is over $100,000. And I call that out because Ms. Garvey's right. We do have a problem meeting the needs of families making over $100,000 in our community. And to me, that is not a call necessarily for more programs and more government money and more intervention, but for us to recognize this is a market that is broken. And there are some ways in which we as government have been suppressing supply and are contributing to the breaking of that market. I think this is really important for all of us. As we have a lot of conversations in all forms, whether we're talking about high density housing, low density housing, or anything in between, these questions about, is more housing needed in this community when a market is not providing housing for people making 100,000 families making $100,000 or more. I think it is clear the answer to that is yes, more supply is needed. So thank you for the opportunity to deliver those thoughts, though they may not be immediately relevant. I am very pleased that we could be a partner in this project in stabilizing our neighbors at Park Shirlington, and I think, as Mr. Khan described well in the renovation plans, bringing more quality and dignity to this housing as well as affordability. So with that, I believe we are ready for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thanks so much. I believe then, congratulations, I should say to Standard, and thank you again to our staff involved. Ms. Jacobs, do we have any other items to come before the board today?
We do not.
All right, with that then, we are in recess until Tuesday, October 18th at 3 p.m. Thanks.